Hello, I hope you're having a good day. Today we will be watching the movie called The Wave. The film introduces Christian, a Norwegian geologist who returns home. Upon arrival, he finds his wife, Idun, fixing the plumbing during the family lunch. They will soon be moving to a new house. Later, Christian goes to work and enjoys a final lunch with his colleagues before relocating to Stavanger with his family. While packing, an alarm distracts him. He can't stop thinking about the sudden drop in water levels, which he finds very unusual and unsettling. While waiting for the ferry, he observes a nearby mountain and has an idea. He decides to return to the Geology Institute, leaving the kids in the car. As he speaks with his former colleagues, he explains that the issue probably isn't with the measuring devices, but rather the cables, since an aquifer doesn't simply stop working. He's been searching for alternative explanations for the formation of new underground layers that might cause erosion, and the signal loss could indicate that this erosion has damaged the cable installed in the mountain. Christian and his former colleague Jacob go to inspect the mountain. As they descend, they confirm that the cables are indeed damaged. Frustrated, they return, and Christian only manages to issue a precautionary warning to avoid alarming the town. He wanted to activate the red alert to evacuate the entire population, but his colleague warned him that doing so would only cause panic. Back at the car, Christian notices the kids are missing and heads to the hotel where Idun works. There he finds them. Julia, his daughter, wants to return home to say goodbye, while his son Sondre stays at the hotel after chatting with the young receptionist. Meanwhile, Georg, who is alone at the Geology Center watching a movie, notices abnormal readings in the sensors indicating rock contractions. He immediately informs Margot, and together they notify Arvid of the findings. Arvid and Jacob decide to enter the mountain to check the sensors personally, while Christian, still uneasy, calls the Geology Center for updates. He then heads to the storage room looking for something specific. Upon finding it, he compares the current contraction data with previous records from Biantaranda and realizes these contractions indicate an imminent landslide. The records show that the mountains aren't expanding, they're compressing against each other. With this discovery, Christian calls the Geology Center again and shares his findings with Arvid. Just as Arvid and Jacob begin climbing, an unexpected earthquake occurs, and Jacob becomes trapped by his feet. Georg and Margot lose communication with Arvid and Jacob, and also observe that groundwater levels are dropping in several areas, a clear sign that a tsunami could strike at any moment. Christian, still on the phone with them, instructs Margot to activate the alarm. Margot complies and triggers the tsunami warning, alerting the public of the imminent danger. Shortly after, a massive landslide occurs. In an attempt to save Jacob, Arvid is struck by a rock and killed. Meanwhile, Christian is taking Julia to safety, warning everyone along the way to climb the hill quickly to escape the tsunami. At the same time, Idun and her colleague Vibeke inform the hotel guests of the risk and guide everyone onto a tour bus to evacuate the city. However, Idun realizes Sondre is missing and goes to look for him. Maria, one of the guests, asks her husband, Philip, to help Idun find her son. With traffic at a standstill, Christian realizes there's not enough time to leave the city by car. He decides to abandon the vehicle and run uphill with Julia, also telling others to leave their cars and flee on foot. At that moment, their neighbor Anna becomes trapped between two vehicles. Christian tells Julia to climb the hill with Thomas, Anna's husband, and their daughter Teresa, while he tries to rescue Anna. But when they realize the tsunami is imminent and there's no time left, they decide to take shelter inside a car. Unfortunately, the wave hits the vehicle with great force, knocking them unconscious. Meanwhile, at the hotel, Maria finds Sondre skating in the hallway with his headphones on, completely unaware of the situation. Idun quickly reacts and gets her son out of there. Shortly after leaving the hotel, they realize the bus has already departed and that a massive wave is heading their way. With no other option, Idun orders everyone to take shelter in the building's basement. Philip runs back to the hotel while Maria, paralyzed by fear, doesn't move. Idun has to drag her to safety. Inside the basement, the two men anxiously wait for them. Idun manages to enter just in time, but Maria is swept away by the force of the water. Philip screams desperately for his wife, but Idun insists they must close the door, knowing that the chances of Maria surviving were minimal. With great effort, they manage to shut the door against the water pressure, and at that moment, everything is plunged into darkness. Christian wakes up, horrified to discover that Anna is gravely injured, and sadly realizes she's dead. He exits the car and begins crawling uphill in search of Julia and other potential survivors. When he finds Julia, he hugs her and silently apologizes to Thomas for not being able to save Anna. At the geology center, Georg and Margot receive a call from Jacob. When they answer, they ask if he's okay and if Arvid is still with him. Jacob doesn't respond, but his silence says it all. Margot and Georg begin to cry, understanding that Arvid has died. In the hotel basement, Idun tries to comfort Philip, who is devastated by the loss of his wife. Christian, for his part, is worried about Idun and Sondre, since the tour bus she mentioned has not yet arrived. When he asks about it, he panics upon learning that no bus has reached its destination. Without hesitation, he decides to return to the hotel to check the situation, asking Julia to stay with Thomas until he returns. Meanwhile, in the basement, Idun and Sondre are desperately fighting against the door, trying to prevent more water from entering. With great effort, they manage to close it. Idun inspects the air vents looking for an escape route, but finding none, she expresses her frustration aloud. Water begins to seep again through the cracks in the door. Philip complains about the situation they're trapped in, which irritates Sondre, who accuses him of not helping enough to seal the door. Idun quickly steps in to stop the argument, while Philip warns that if they keep waiting, they could die. Meanwhile, Christian paddles through floating debris to reach the hotel. Upon reaching a drier area, he started walking and discovered he was standing on a submerged tour bus. He opened the bus door and went inside, inspecting the lifeless bodies. Eventually, he found the young bus assistant, but seeing neither Idun nor Sondre, he decided to keep searching in the hotel. When he reached the room where Idun and Sondre were, it was already almost entirely flooded. Desperate, they were trying to open the shelter door to escape, but a tree and various debris were blocking the exit. With no other choice, they swam to a space where air was coming in so they could breathe. Philip, finding himself trapped with nothing to hold on to, panicked, and in his desperation pushed Sondre underwater. Idun saw her son drowning and, without hesitation, shoved Philip down to save Sondre. Philip didn't survive, and Idun, anguished, apologized to her son for what she had done. Meanwhile, Christian arrived at the hotel and began searching everywhere for Idun and Sondre. Upon reaching the basement and seeing it completely flooded, he hesitated to enter but didn't give up and kept looking. In one of the rooms, he found Sondre's backpack, which made him fear the worst. Filled with rage and despair, he struck the window hard. Idun and Sondre heard the noise and tried to make more by hitting the air pipes so Christian would notice them. However, he didn't hear. Then Idun grabbed a tool and struck the pipes harder. This time, Christian heard the sound and knocked on the window in response. Realizing Christian had heard them, Idun and Sondre laughed with relief, but their joy was short-lived. Water began entering quickly through the ventilation shaft. Christian didn't waste any time and dove underwater, swimming beneath the building until he reached the area below the hotel. With great effort, he started removing the debris that was blocking the door so he could open it. Meanwhile, Idun told Sondre to wait while she also swam to try to open the door from inside. Unknowingly, Christian and Idun were working on the same door from opposite sides. When they finally managed to open it, Idun waited on the stairs while Christian approached Sondre, who was terrified. Sondre didn't want to swim to the stairs, but Christian looked him in the eyes and, with a calm and firm voice, assured him that everything would be fine and that he'd be right behind him. Sondre finally agreed and started swimming with his father. However, on the way, he began to run out of air. Desperate, Christian swam to him and breathed into his mouth to help him catch his breath, then signaled him to keep going. When Idun saw Sondre, she quickly pulled him out of the water but noticed with anguish that Christian wasn't with him. Realizing her husband had run out of air and couldn't keep swimming, Idun immediately dove in, found him, and pulled him out with all her strength. On the surface, Idun pressed Christian's chest and gave him mouth-to-mouth resuscitation. She tried several times, but he didn't react. When she began to lose hope and thought Christian wouldn't wake up, she paused for a moment, overwhelmed by despair. But Sondre didn't give up. With tears in his eyes, he begged his father to wake up and began pressing on his chest with all his might. He gave him mouth-to-mouth and continued compressions until finally, Christian expelled the water from his lungs and opened his eyes. Father and son embraced tightly, relieved to be alive. Meanwhile, on the hill, Julia sat next to Teresa, restless and worried about her family. Suddenly, she heard the sound of a helicopter. She stood up immediately and looked to the sky, hoping it was her family arriving. But when she saw it wasn't them, her heart sank. The helicopter flew away. Soon after, she saw her parents and brother approaching from afar. Julia ran toward them with all her strength, and Idun lifted her into the air, hugging her with all her love. Together, they continued walking up to where the rescuers and other survivors were. Despite the tragedy and horror they had lived through, they were happy to have survived and to be together again, and thus, the film reaches its emotional end. I hope you enjoyed the video.